Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Aaron Smith. I'm always telling people that they can sketch whatever they can imagine, whether it's real or not. Science fiction, monsters, and superheroes are very popular, but those things would never exist without creative people inventing the ideas. I had an idea for sketching something that may be both science fiction and monsters. It would also be telling a story with some simple shapes and shadows. Let me show you what I mean. All right, this sketch is kind of a combination of me already knowing exactly what I want to sketch and me not really knowing at all what I want to sketch. I do know the effect I'm trying to create, though, so I'm just going to dive right in here and have some fun with it. I was thinking about how I really like oldie black and white monster movies and sci-fi movies. The really old ones from the 50s are so wonderful. They were often low budget, and the monster usually looked like a guy in a rubber suit, but they were a lot of fun. Sometimes it's the little things that make us happy, and watching some of those old cheesy monster movies with low budget special effects makes me really happy. So that's what I'm going to try and do here. I'm going back and forth a bit with this pencil and just making some extremely light lines. I hope that you're able to see them, but if you're not, this will become much more clear to you as we go. Just know for right now, I'm just making a couple of marks on the page to figure out where it is that I want to sketch some things. I've got an idea in mind of something that I'd like to show you that's going to be a lot of fun when we get to the end. And it's kind of in the theme of those old 50s monster sci-fi movies that I really like watching. So we're just drawing quite lightly. As you can see, it kind of looks like handprints there with three fingers. But we're going to get a little bit better as we go, and you'll be able to see what I'm doing. I'm using a Mephisto pencil, which is a mechanical pencil or a lead holder, however you want to call that. It's a wonderful, wonderful pencil made by the Koh-I-Noor company. It's actually my very favorite pencil. I carry it around with me everywhere I go. I have three or four of them, actually, and I've given a few of them away, too, to my friends. But I never imagined that a pencil would be such a great tool to draw with. I feel like you really need to have good tools when you're drawing. You can draw with anything. You could draw with a ballpoint pen if you want to. But, if you have good art supplies, I feel like it makes a huge difference on what you're doing. That is the case with this Mephisto pencil. It's a great pencil, and I just love using it. You can make extremely light lines, or you can press down on it a bit harder, apply a little bit more pressure, and get some really nice dark stuff too. It'll give you a nice sharp line. Absolutely beautiful. Once you've used this pencil, you're never going to want to use another one. So I'm working on this theme of my monsters, and I guess I should get a little bit more specific on what I mean, what kind of monsters or sci-fi things that I'm talking about. I often think that the sillier and more low budget the movie is, the better. One of the first monster movies ever made was in 1915. It was a German movie called The Golem. It was a silent movie, and that was one of the first to ever feature a monster in the story. So soon after that came Nosferatu, which was also a silent film. Several others were made about the same time. In the 1930s, movies like Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, those kind were released, which are now considered classic universal monsters. Another classic was created about that time, which was the original King Kong. When King Kong was released in 1933, nobody had ever seen anything like that. The special effects used at the time, which were the integration of stop-motion animation and live actors, was something extremely innovative at that time. When we see those kinds of special effects today, we just kind of laugh at them at how primitive they look. But back in the early 1930s, they were absolutely brilliant. I think they're still brilliant. They're just wonderful. So as I'm making this sketch, obviously these are hands that I'm drawing. They're going to be alien hands. And I'm imagining that these hands are reaching out and they're touching something in front of us. Maybe it's a screen of some kind, but they're reaching out towards us, and we're going to really make it look like that coming up later. The one thing that I want to do, though, is to make darker on my sketch all of those places on these hands that would be touching the screen that would be in front of it. So imagine you're there and in some place, maybe you're in the shower. Imagine that. You're in the shower and the shower curtain, you look over at it and you see this on the outside of it. There's these hands and these faces behind it. That would be pretty terrifying. So the parts that would be touching the screen in front of it should be darker and the rest of them obviously lighter, and that's what I'm doing with this one pencil. I'll be switching pencils coming up in just a bit, but for now, I'm just going to lay down this quick sketch, lay down some graphite really quick to sketch out a bit of what I want to do with this later. The entire thing is a sketch, and so it's all going to be very loose and free and fun. But before I finish it up, I want to be very, very sketchy on it, if that makes any sense, and make my pencil lines kind of a map of where I really want to go with this drawing as we continue. It was around the same time that those monster movies began to be produced that science fiction films began to appear. There was a film called A Trip to the Moon that was made in 1902 that relied mostly on camera tricks to create the illusion of a rocket traveling to the moon. The first full-length sci-fi movie was Metropolis. That was made in 1927. And some movies were both of a sci-fi and a monster movie at the same time. For instance, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1920, or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea from 1916, which was later remade by a few different companies a few different times. Those had elements of both science fiction and monster movies. And it wasn't just in the movies, though. There were ongoing serials like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers that were on TV, being adapted from the comic strips. The 1950s were a great time for monsters and sci-fi. As one of my favorite movies ever made, The Day the Earth Stood Still was made in the 50s. There were many great movies in the 50s, though. Forbidden Planet was one, The Blob, The Thing from Another World, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, that's another favorite of mine. And that was also about the same time that the first Godzilla movies were being released. Wonderful, 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 fun movies. I love that kind of stuff. And so keeping those in mind, that's what I'm drawing here as I keep that stuff in mind. At the end of the 1960s, the first Planet of the Apes movie was released, as was 2001, A Space Odyssey. The 1970s had several really good sci-fi movies. And then, of course, in 1977, the first Star Wars movie was released, as was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, followed in 1979 by Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Also, in 1979, was a movie that combined monster movies with science fiction. It was Ridley Scott's Alien. There really have been so many great monster and sci-fi movies, and I'm just hardly scratching the surface of all the great stuff that has been produced for movies, television, books, comics, everything. And the best is probably yet to come. They probably haven't even created some of the great stuff that's coming our way. I'm looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. People have very vivid imaginations and can be extremely creative. I look forward to that. I think that's an awful lot of fun. I love sketching too, and that's one of the ways that I appreciate things like those movies that I love. Making a sketch here kind of based on those, thinking about them. And we're getting towards the end of the hands here, but I have a couple of fingers to go. There we go. How about that? All right, so I think what I want to do here is to stop the sketching part. I've got a napkin that I got out of my kitchen. It's just a regular napkin, nothing special about it. And I wrap it around my first finger, my index finger. And what I want to do here is to blend a bit of that pencil that I have been laying down this whole time. And I do that just by barely touching the graphite that's on the paper here and smoothing it out just a bit. Make little circles with that if I can. The hands are not made very big, so I don't have an awful lot of room to do that. But here's what that looks like on the napkin. And now what I want to do is to take this other pencil. This is a woodless graphite pencil. I don't know if you've seen those before, but it's a wonderful tool to draw with. I love this pencil. I use it all the time. A thing that I love to do is that I'll make a sketch with my Mephisto pencil that I was showing you before, and I draw the light lines. I kind of map out the drawing that I want it to be, and then I get this woodless graphite. Now this graphite, I'm barely touching the paper as I go around with this woodless graphite. It's a much darker, heavier lead, and it's available actually. You can get this in varying degrees of different lead weights. The one that I'm using right now is just kind of one of the mid-range ones. I think it's a 2B, maybe it's a 4B. But I'm barely touching the paper with this, and it's laying down a wonderful, wonderful heavy graphite. And I'm going to go through and fix this up in just a minute. I'll show you how this works once we get a little bit further and I get to lay down some of this stuff. I want to make some faces that are back behind these hands. And I want it to look truly like the hands are reaching out in front of the faces. Some of these hands, I'm just now recalling that I need to make some wrists on the hands so that they look like they're probably attached to the bodies. That's the way it should be, and I didn't draw them before very well. And so the shape of these faces here, they can be anything you want. I'm just putting down some scribbly graphite, and then we're going to blend that out coming up in just a bit, and I'll show you the nice effect that that has. You can really do some fun stuff. The aliens that I'm drawing here are kind of the classic gray aliens, they call them. Do they really exist? Well, that's a good question. A lot of people believe that they do. Many people believe that they do not. Did a spaceship crash near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947? Was there a government cover-up? Have we engineered alien technology to add ideas to our own technology? Those are questions we'd all love answers to, wouldn't we? I guess my own thoughts about it are that I need some good evidence before I believe it. There is a saying, maybe you've heard this saying, it goes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And that's where I am, I think. I haven't seen the evidence of intelligent life from other worlds, so I can't accept the claim that there is. That doesn't mean that I'm saying that there's no intelligent life out there. I'm just saying that I can't accept the assertion that there is until I have a good reason to accept it. Maybe that evidence will come. Maybe it will. And if so, I will rethink my position. Until then, I think I have to stay in the default position of not accepting the claim. But this goes for aliens, monsters, trolls, ghosts, zombies, and Bigfoot. The time to believe in those things is when there's a good reason to believe it, not before. So, are there aliens? Are there ghosts? Maybe. I don't know. I'll believe it when I have good reasons to believe it. And those reasons will be based on evidence, not internet videos where people make an assortment of claims. Until then, I'll have fun sketching those things and stretching my imagination just as far as I can. Whether or not they exist, it's still a lot of fun, and we can make them kind of creepy too. I'm blending in what I've drawn with that woodless graphite pencil, the magic pencil that I was just using. And let's do some of the wrist stuff here. I need a clean piece of napkin. I just smudged a big thing, which maybe I'll fix that. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will. But I'm blending out the woodless graphite that I put down on my pad. It blends extremely well, as you can see, gives us some beautiful tones. And this little guy here, I'm blending out his eyes and smudging them. Now, these are supposed to be pretty far in the background, and so I don't mind not having any edges on them at all. In fact, I think it helps with the illusion if you don't have any outlines of these characters at all. The only outlines that you should have on this sketch probably are the hands that are closer to us in the foreground. It gives us more detail and shows us more stuff. And I think that's probably the way we should draw these. Make your guys in the background be very, very blended. No harsh outlines on them at all. And as I keep finding new places on my napkin here to blend, I'm only doing that because I don't want to spread pencil all over the place that I didn't mean to. That's the reason I'm doing it this way. But in the little characters, these little aliens in the background, it's okay if you kind of make them a little further blended than you really meant to. That's okay. All right, let me look this thing over. I think up in here in the fingers of this guy, I think I want to go ahead and blend that. Oh, see what I did right there? I kind of made a mistake, but it's no big deal. We'll come back to that. But I'm just blending out some of what I put down in these fingers in the first place a bit more. There we go. Now this is my kneaded eraser. Look at that. I'm just going to lift that right off of there. That came off immediately. My kneaded eraser is a wonderful tool to use, and it's called kneaded, not because I need it, although sometimes I do need it, but it's kneaded, Kneaded, kneaded as in how you knead dough. That's what that actually is, and it's a wonderful tool as well. It's found in the Gioconda set of the Koh-I-Noor pencils, and that's where I got mine anyway. There's a number of places you can get them, I suppose, but mine came in the Gioconda set. So now what I'm doing, I've taken my woodless graphite and I'm going back over some of the shadows that I put down in the first place. When I put them down the first time, as you may remember, they were just kind of mapping out the area of where I wanted this stuff to be. Let's take that kneaded eraser again and do some stuff. As you can see, here's what it looks like in the package, by the way. Before I ever took it out of the package, it looked just like that. But once you take it out and you kind of squish it up, you knead it. That's what you're actually doing. You can do all kinds of amazing things. What I did was I kind of shaped it into a pointed sort of a cone shape at the end. And I'm just kind of touching the paper and giving it a little twist as I set it down on top of my pencil. And what that's going to do is just lift up a tiny bit of pencil there, and it makes a very subtle difference. But overall, it's going to be good. See, there's the pencil on the end of that kneaded eraser, and all I need to do is to squish it around, get a clean point, and I can go right back to touching it to the paper again with a clean point to my kneaded eraser. But what I'm doing with this kneaded eraser is giving my little aliens in the background a bit of texture. If you were seeing them through a screen or through even through a shower curtain like I'd mentioned before, you might see a bit of texture on these guys in the background. And here again, I'm just going to squeeze this and make another point on the end and continue pressing down. And I don't even know for sure if this is showing up on the camera, but it's a subtle little thing that you can do with your kneaded eraser to pick up some of that pencil. And it does make a difference. It makes it look a lot better, even though it's subtle. It's a very nice texture to put on that stuff in the background. Can you see how I've made those little eraser dots on there? I guess we should call them. I don't have a good word for what to call that, but I've just lifted up some of the pencil that was already there. I've taken my woodless graphite again, and I feel like I need to put a bit more shade on this guy. So let's do that. Maybe I'll even take the paper towel now and go ahead and blend that right after I did it. You can go back and forth as much as you want between drawing with your pencils and then blending it out or using your kneaded eraser, or, as just however you feel like doing it. This is only a sketch, and you are free to do it however you feel like it ought to be. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. Let's see. You know what? Around these fingers, if they were pushing down on some kind of a screen that was in front of it, I feel like around the edges of those fingers, it would probably be lighter. I don't think we'd even see pencil from whatever's behind it. So what I'm doing is cleaning up around the fingers that I put down there. And I think that's going to sell the idea a little bit better than just the way that I had it in the first place. I'm only going around where my fingers, where I've drawn the fingers on here, sharpening them up just a bit. I think that's going to sell the idea of this as well. And you know what? Even the places where there are fingers, but they're not directly touching the screen that's in front of it, I think I want to lighten that up a bit too with my kneaded eraser. Just like that. You can do that as much or as little as you want. I think it helps to sell the idea. There you go. And now I'm going to take my Mephisto pencil again, and I'm going to take it because it gives me such a sharp line. I can make a very, very seriously sharp line with this pencil. And I want to go around these hands and find a couple of areas as I go, and I'm just kind of spot checking it. I'm not going over everything that I've already done. I'm only kind of finding the spot checking sort of places where I feel like there maybe needs to be just a bit darker, a little bit sharper line outlining stuff. That's what I'm doing with this pencil now. Have you ever heard somebody say, draw what you know? Have you ever heard that? You should draw what you know because you'll get the best results in your work if you're already familiar with it. Have you heard people say that before? Well, if everybody always sketched what we know, science fiction wouldn't even exist. We have to use our imaginations for things. You can sketch things whether you are familiar with them or not. Maybe a better phrase would be draw what you like. Are you interested in aliens and monsters? If so, you don't have to have seen one to draw one. Make it how you think it should be. Can you imagine if you sketched an alien and somebody said to you, "That doesn't look like an alien"? Wouldn't it make you want to say, "How do you know that?" That's what I would want to say anyway. These things can look like whatever you can imagine. Be creative and draw the wildest, craziest thing that you can think of. That's fun. That's what makes this fun. Sometimes I love to sketch an old country scene with railroad tracks and trees. But sometimes I like to see how innovative I can be and draw aliens and monsters. Sometimes I show my sketches to other people when I'm done with them. Sometimes I don't. That is entirely up to you. It's your universe, and you can share just as much of it or as little of it as you like. Okay. We're getting kind of towards the end of this drawing, and I'm going back and forth between my eraser and my Mephisto pencil, and even my woodless graphite pencil. And I'm just, as my eyes see things that I feel like ought to be a bit darker or changed slightly, I go ahead and do that. As you kind of step back and look at this entire drawing at once, it really looks like a lot of fun. It looks like these aliens are coming forward and putting their hands on the screen. They're out to get us, aren't they? It's a lot of fun to think about that. I think if I make a slightly darker shape here under this one's head, it's going to kind of sell the idea of the shape of his head. There we go. Look at that. All right, and like I said, sometimes I'd love to sketch an old country scene with railroad tracks and a barn and trees and whatever else, or mountains. But sometimes I just want to get creative and see how crazy I can get with these drawings and draw monsters and aliens and just have a lot of fun with that. That's what's fun to me in these kinds of drawings, and I hope it's fun for you too. I hope you enjoy just being creative, and the sky is the limit on how creative you can be. You can do anything because you're an artist and you can do it. So that's my idea for a creepy little sketch and what I meant earlier by telling a story with simple shapes and shadows. Besides looking good, the purpose in a sketch like this is to make people think, what if? What other kinds of sketches can we make that tell a story in a simple drawing? There is no limit on creativity, and you can come up with some great ideas through your sketching. Because you are an artist. See you soon.